Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the ForNAV File Service seminar. Originally, we were going to call this the Jacob's Garage because it's in most of the work on this is done in Jacob's house. But as you can see, Jacob has no garage anymore. It burned down on Friday because there was a shortcut. This is neighbor's golf cart. So we'll stick to the original title and call the File Service webinar. Hopefully Jakob will build a new garage so we can get him to write some new code in the new year. But this is how it looks now before the fire was put out. Okay, so housekeeping. So please use the tool for questions, and we'll have time after the presentation and demo to answer the questions. And the recording, as usual, will be recording on YouTube under the ForNAV reports. So basically today we'll walk you through everything from the background of how and why we did this, walk through the security aspects, and then walk you through the setup and how to use this, and some details around how to use the API. And then after some PowerPoints and how you do it, Jakob will take you through the solution and also show you how to troubleshoot if and when you run into problems with files either locally on BC. And then of course after that we'll do questions. So basically, first thing we started to think about that was when Microsoft introduced Universal Code. So everybody knows from the start you have not been able to use the file APIs on the cloud solution because Microsoft don't want you to access their server files, and that's obvious for obvious reasons. But since BC 22, I believe, it's now also been impossible to use this on-prem. That means that in a lot of scenarios where you have hybrid solutions, where you have BC and maybe something in the cloud and also have some old on-prem solution, then you still need files. Files have been there for many years and they will still stick around. So we decided to create a solution that piggybacks on our print service solution. And for those of you who already use that, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but we have a solution to doing direct print also for Universal Code and cloud. Before the end of the year, we should pass around 2 million print jobs every month. So this is a well-proven solution that really scales, and we are piggybacking on the infrastructure for that. So the way that the file service is built up is that I'll walk you through the installation is that when you have done the setup, you simply reference a code unit, the ForNAV file service, and then you write the code like you used to do. And we have tried to mimic the style of the old API, but also we have looked a lot of the .NET API for doing files. And for those of you who work with .NET knows that the .NET file API can do almost anything on files, and that is possible on this planet. But before doing anything, we of course looked at security. We know from the print service that security is key here, and we have also been through a lot of hard security audits, especially with German customers who are really keen on keeping their files to themselves. And the way this is created is at no time any data is leaving the customer's installation in a BC. So everything is done either on BC, which of course is kept secure by Microsoft, or on the file server, which is local on the customer's network. And we only use outgoing HTTPS, and there's no incoming HTTPS. Also that when we access data on BC, we use a service key, and this is stored in the Windows vault, and that also means it cannot be moved to another machine. If somebody hacks the local file server machine, even that will not bring you very far, because we have also spent time on leaving the access to BC from the file service, and there's only one table actually you can get into, and that's emptied all the time. So there's not much you can do with this. So we have tried to do everything on keeping this completely safe. And again, at no time we will not be able to see the customer data because it's not passing through our servers at all. Also on the old APIs, if you run with admin rights on the server, you can actually access C-colon program files and tamper with everything on the machine. That's not possible with this solution. Everything is locked down, so it's only the files and directories that you give access to, you can actually do something with. And the old trick of doing dot in file paths cannot be used here. Any of you remember the early days of ASP.NET, you could actually dot out to the outer directory of your solution and do harm to the server. That's not possible here. So everything is sort of sandboxed within the environment that you allow people to access. If you have more questions on security, and some of you have, we can do that at the end. Oh, here we go. To set up solution, you simply go to the ForNAV download page, and it's the same install as the designer and converter. And if you see on the screenshot, you can see there's something called Direct Printer and File Service, and this used to be only the print service. But if you already have the print service installed, you simply run the installer and it will override the existing service and upgrade it with the file access as well. Then you go into a config file. That's a JSON file that sits in program data. And the interest part here is the array with the file shares. And you can see it has an alias and path. The path is where you sandbox people to access. And as you can see, you can use environment variables from that you also see in the command shell of Windows. So in this case, it's public, and then you can have the subpath in here. And the alias is what you need to access this. So it compares to the old file mapping functionality in Windows that everybody used in the old days. Then on the BC side, you have to install the Customizable Report Pack, and then you have to go to the Direct Print and File Setup page, which is also the same as you used to use on the Direct Print service. And then you need to create a service key because that's enable you to call into BC. Now within the setup page, you simply press the download configuration action, and then it will download a file to your local PC. So it's important that you run this page on the PC where your file server is installed. Then the file service will have a file association with this file and open the config file and store the information in the Windows vault, and then it'll delete the file. There'll also be a warning that you should make sure that the file is deleted because this contains information of how to access BC and the queue that we use to get the data out of BC. But that's basically all the setup you need to do. Next thing is you need to do is to create a Visual Studio Code project, and you need to add a dependency to the Customizable Report Pack, and then you can actually start writing code. And you can see in this example on the right side, I have a write text call in there and uses this public files alias I created. So this is how you do it, and then you can simply write everything in subpath underneath and do your file magic in there. The API is again more or less a copy of the .NET API and contains of a directory part and a file part. And the directory part is can do what you want to do with directories. So you can scan directories to see what files are in them. You can create new directories, test if they exist, delete, and then you can do move and copy also. And again, this is all done on the code is executed to issue this command on BC, but all the work is done on the file server. So it's not that you have to transfer everything to BC to do this. You simply send over the command, or that's done automatic to the file service, and that's doing everything over there. So it's really fast what you do. On the file side, you also have the normal file operations, and then for convenience, we have three sets of read and write file commands. So one is the from stream, which handles all the binary stuff, and then you have capability to read a single lines or read a whole text file at a time, which is really convenient if you just want a piece of JSON or anything in there to work with. And then we enter nerdland here because everybody who worked with text file over the last 20 years know that in the beginning you simply had that a character was a byte in a text file, and you could easily read that because you would get something out of it. But in this world we're living, it can actually be something different depending on encoding or this byte watermark, which if you don't know it, you think your file is corrupt. And actually this, where the question mark is turned upside down, that's a byte watermark for UTF-8 encoding. And the first time you see it, you think something is really wrong in here, but actually this is normal. But the problem is that if you're not the one who are actually both writing the file and reading it again, you have no clue if there's this byte watermark, which is called BOM, or it's not there. You have to figure it out. And also there's on top of that, that's the encoding part. So encoding is something that was put into computer programs a long time ago, because in the beginning, of course, 1 byte was 1 character. But since all the different local characters on this planet will only fit into a 4-byte integer, and if you have to send 4 bytes, everything you have to send over A or B or digits, then the internet will slow down because it's a lot of data. So you use this encoding to compress what's in there, and in here the most common used one is this UTF-8. And UTF-8 is encoding where the most commonly used characters from native English is in there, so ATC and all the digits and some special characters, and they only take up 1 byte. But if you have Danish or German local characters, they will be in 2 bytes. But end of the day, the size of the file will be more comparable to if you had these single bytes in the old days. The good news is here that the ForNAV File Service support all of these that also exist in Windows. You will have an enum that you can basically specify that. And for those of you who worked in legacy nav, you know that the code page was also a living hell back there, where some of us use 850 and others use other code pages, but we support all of them, so you can also read your old files that handle code pages. Also on BOMs, and I said they can be there and they cannot be there, and you have to figure out if you want to write BOMs or also if you want to indicate that the file you're reading contains a BOM. And you can see in here there's a lot of them. I don't know if this is a full list, but you can see you have these weird characters that the author of these encodings are really put in there to more or less make sure that it wouldn't collide with some normal text you would put in, and that's also why they are so weird. But if some of them show up in the text file, you need to indicate that there's this kind of BOM in here, and we'll automatically remove this for you and do the right read of the file. On top of that, what's also been annoying all the time with the basic file handling in BC and nav is that the error handling was really poor. And just like the code.run, where you have the option of getting the error or letting BC and nav throw the error to have the user see it, you also have this capability in here, so you can select an error action for the next command, and you can set that to show or ignore. In this case, it's ignore. So you can look at the last error and see if there's something in there and do a proper error message, or you can just do an optional operation. So if the file doesn't exist, you can go and create it, and then you can continue with the execution. But this is controlled down at the action level, and you can easily set up what to do in a given situation. I know this is really small, but it's necessary to have everything in one slide to explain it. So let's say you have a lot of file operations, and if you were on the old nav, then you simply run more or less on the iron because everything was executed on the same machine. But in this case, the L code is run in BC, which can be in the cloud, and the file service on the local machine. So the time of transmission the data is critical in here. So if you're doing a lot of operations, and I think the simplest way to explain this is if you write 2,000 bytes to a file, 1 byte at a time, then if you have to do 2,000 calls, it's not really efficient. So to support that, we have created an async mode on top of the normal file calls, and the async mode is simply that you write a set of commands in here. So in this case, you ask if the file exists and so on, and do some writes to it. And then at the end, you can see there's a call down here called run task, and that's basically gathering all the calls that was in here. And then they're sent in bulk to the file service and executed over there. And the way to get back what actually happened over there is that you can up here in the return value of these task messages ask for a number for this task. So this is not the actual value, but just an identifier to be able to retrieve the value that comes back when the calls have been executed. So down here at the bottom, I can go in after the run task. This now has a value, so I can get the task result based on this exist false, and I can do some code that reacts on it. So this enables you to do a lot of complex things and do it bulk on the server, and then be able to do decent file handling at the backbone of this to make sure you get the results correct. So I know there's a lot of detail in here, and we're trying to follow up with a lot of additional information, also based on feedback that we get from you, and also support cases. So we'll keep piling stuff on top of this. But now enough PowerPoints. So Jakob is going to walk us through how to troubleshoot and also show you some of the inner workings of what's going on in solution. So let me move over to you, Jakob.
Yes, I have taken the presenter role.
Fantastic.
So do you see my demo screen here?
Yep.
Okay. So the first thing I will show you is what happens on the PC side when you do file requests. As Michael mentioned, this is very similar to the infrastructure of the direct print solution, where print jobs goes to a queue and then is picked up by the printing service. For the files, it's more or less the same. We have a file request queue on Business Central. And every time you do a request for file information, it creates a job on this queue. So if you want to debug some of your file requests, if you don't exactly know what happened, you can go into this queue and you can look at the jobs that are in here. Of course, you can set up the queue to delete the jobs once they are done, or you can set it to keep them for debugging purposes. So, for instance, if I want to look at this this Scandia request, this is a request for letting me know which files are in the demo files share. I can go and click download the response, and if I download the response, I get a text file back with JSON in it, and this is what the result looks like in JSON. So either you could be able to see here if something is out of the ordinary, or you could send this to us for debugging purposes. On the other things you can do on the service side, this is the same, again, the same tool you have to manage the direct print. It shows me that on this machine, my service is connected to a cloud environment. I could have multiple different environments in here, so I could service multiple different cloud environments or on-prem environments. If I want to have additional information about how the service is running, I can right-click this and I can choose View Log. And this will give me a log of how this service is operating. Again, maybe you can see for yourselves what's wrong, or you can send it to us and we can help you debug this service. On top of that, you have access to extended information inside the Windows event log. So if we open the Windows event log down here, so we can see there's a ForNAV entry in here, and we can get additional information about what happens in this service. So as you can hopefully see, there are multiple layers of debugging if something is not working the way we expect it to. So let me go back to PowerPoint. Now we are back in PowerPoint, and I'll just tell you a little bit about what we are still working on, because right now this is out in the first version that we have, and we already had a lot of requests from users who are using this, and one of them is because this is running using web requests. There's a limitation on the size of jobs that we can handle, and right now that limitation is around 50 megabytes. So that covers a lot of the usage, but we already had some requests from customers who have files that are a lot bigger. This is a problem to handle these types of files, both because of the transfer of the data, but also because everything has to be handled on Business Central, either in memory or blob fields that goes into the database. So we were looking for a way to kind of segment files so that you can read from one position of a file to the next, to another position of a file. So you can read the file in chunks and then process it as you go along. So this will be part of the next release, where you can index a file and say, I want to read from, for instance, if you're reading bytes, you want to read from byte number 10 to byte number 1000, for instance, and you can do the same for the read operation. And again, we have put in built-in support for handling this text files with encoding. And here it becomes is very tricky, because as Michael mentioned, some characters are represented by 1 byte and other characters are represented by maybe 2 or 3 bytes. So we have put in some effort to take the hassle away from you. So if you want to read from text character number 100 to 200, then you don't have to deal with what width these text characters have inside the file. We will take care of that. And we also put in work, so some extra work on handling files with lines. For instance, if you're reading a comma-separated text file, you can actually say that I want to read from this line to another line. So you can maybe process 1,000 lines at a time in a comma-separated text file. And you don't have to have the hassle on the PC side with passing the line breaks and finding where one line starts and the next one line ends. And we'll also have support for truncating files if you want to end a file at a specific point. So these are based on the needs that some of you already have. We also had a request that the scan directory function not only returns what you have inside one of these share aliases, as Michael showed you in the configuration that you can set up to point to a specific directory, but you can also set up, you can also ask Gandia to give you a list of the different aliases that you serve on the file server. Scandia already works so that you can scan a lot of subdirectories as well if you want. And maybe we will put in functions to compare files on the server side, or simply request the size without doing a full Scandia. But this is just to make the life easier for you guys. A little bit about some of the advanced topics when you're doing this. Some of you will have files at different locations, maybe different offices or production facilities, or even on two machines inside the same office that you want to work with. So the infrastructure allows you to set up multiple file services if you need that. And you can, in Business Central, when you code against the API, you can actually tell it which file service to send the request to, so that they don't pick up requests that were actually meant for another file service. So there is some routing functionality in there, and it's again, it's more or less the same as we already have for the printer solution. On performance considerations, as Michael said, this is not as fast as doing direct file operations like we did it in the old days, because this has to go over the queue and it has to go over the internet. So it's a good idea if you're doing a lot of simple requests to use the async functionality. That will make it faster. But you can also fine-tune the service to pull the request queue with timing that suits your installation better. Because if you pull more often, then of course you put a little bit of load on your service tier. It's not a lot. We haven't had any problems with this, but in theory, you should give it some rest sometimes. But you can actually set this pull interval to be really low, so everything works pretty fast. But we don't suggest an infrastructure where you, maybe if you have 20 machines in the office, that you install this on all 20 machines. We would rather see a solution where you maybe install it on one server, and then it has, if you need to place files or read files on other machines, then you access those machines via network shares from the file service. So the file service can actually access files over the network as well. One last thing I want to add is that now we have this infrastructure to do print and all this file stuff. We actually also have infrastructure in there to call PowerShell scripts on the local machines, either user PCs or machines running this service. This is not something that we have documented yet, but if some of you need it, we are willing to discuss how you can use it, because it's actually already in there. But it's as I said, it's not a documented feature yet. But this infrastructure that we have here, it opens up for a lot of different possibilities. Print was the first most obvious one, and then a lot of you told us that files would be a next logical step. So here we are right now. Okay, Michael, I think that was it from me.
Thank you, Jakob. So I hope you got the idea what this is about, and but let me sum up. So we perfectly know that there's alternatives to this, so you can store things in blob fields already in BC, or you can use SharePoint or OneDrive or something else. But still, we believe there's and we can see there's a need for these hybrid cloud solutions, because storing everything in a blob on BC will bankrupt you if you have huge files, and also coding against OneDrive, one or the other, also is pretty tricky, and it might not be that performant. Also, we see some scenarios where the customer have a device that was written where the software was written many years ago, so it can only access a C drive or something, so that it has to go on there. And we also heard people who want to do FTP, which you cannot do from BC, and they don't want to hassle with writing a lot of cloud code to that. So you can easily set up an FTP server on PEM solution and use the ForNAV File Service. So at least we have seen there's a lot of scenarios out there that still requires these hybrid cloud solutions and requires you to use something on your local drive. So there's definitely a need for this. And also we know that a lot of you have already written part of a solution that does some of this. But what we want to achieve with this, that we want to have a product that sort of addresses all the different pitfalls that you run into that makes it worthwhile to use this. So security is an important thing, the easy installation. So you don't have to be a developer to actually set this up. Anybody who can just do these few steps can actually set up the service, and it's pretty easy to use. So we think we have done a lot to save time and money, both for you and the customer, and also make something that where the code is maintainable moving forward to do this. I think we should look at the questions.
There was one about the async functionality. Maybe I should give another example of how you want to use that. So for instance, if you have a production equipment or scanners or something that are leaving files, small files with small messages in a directory, then you could use one call to scan the directory to see which files are there. And then if you need to read them all, then you can make a batch of read jobs and call this in one request. So you can maybe read 100 files in just one request if you need that. That's what the async stuff is used for. It's maybe more batching the tasks than it's actually async. So there's also a question for if we are going to support FTP read and write. And from the top of my head right now, I'll say that this is not something that we are working on, mostly because that the file service will kind of remove most of the scenarios where you would want to implement FTP. So it's more like FTP is more like if you want to access something from elsewhere on the internet. On actually FTP servers. So you will, if you have this, you will not build a setup where you have your own FTP server simply to serve your files to BC. This is not necessary anymore. And if you actually have a scenario where you want to go to a FTP server and get a file, then you could use this PowerShell stuff that I mentioned. This would be maybe a scenario for PowerShell because there's lots of tools. There are built-in tools for FTP in PowerShell, and there are lots of other tools like WinSCP that has libraries that you can use from PowerShell. I hope this answers the question.
Also, there was a question about if we support UNC paths, and
we do.
I forgot to mention that. So UNC is also supported. Bottom line of this FTP and this special scenario, so we see there's a growing requirement for doing local backups, and that's partly driven by rules from the local governments. So in Denmark, the government is really keen that everything is stored digitally and that stored within Denmark. So and the problem is that the data centers are placed outside Denmark. So a lot of customers they want to play safe and also store things locally. That can be invoices or and all sorts of documents that you actually want to get on a local drive and be able to access it fast.
So and the configuration of using UNC path is exactly what Michael showed, where you create an alias that points to local files. You can also create an alias that points to a path starting with / server name and share folder. So it's straightforward.
Yeah.
One thing we should mention also, a question we got before, is if this works from the job queue or from API calls, and it does. You don't have to have a user interface to have this work. You can code to the file with the file service from the job queue.
Yeah. Jacob, then there's a question of is it better to use outstream, instream, and only make one call in file service, or make more calls async? What would you say?
I would say if you're reading like a large binary file and it's less than 50 megabytes, I would say just read it in one call to read from stream. Then you get the whole thing, and you can work with it in a blob file on Business Central. But it's mostly if you, for instance, if you're working with images or PDF documents that you want to read binary stuff, a lot of the time you should use these extra functions to actually read text. So where the file is most likely UTF-8 and everything that happens in Business Central is Unicode, we will simply do the translation for you. So we will take the hassle out of that.
It's a function to open the file in the new tab when giving a path to the file without downloading the file in the browser. I'm not sure I clearly understand the.
No, I'm not sure I understand it either.
But you don't need to use the download capabilities in the browser. You can do this behind the scene, and that also enables you to use this in the job queue. So this does not require UI.
But there's a scenario where you actually can benefit from the UI, because let's say that the file service actually has a function called download file. So if you have a PDF document somewhere on a local drive that you can see from the file service, then the file service can get the PDF file from the local drive and then send it to the user's browser. So you can create an experience where the user clicks a file in BC, and then it opens in a new tab in the user's browser. So you can get these files locally. And this also, of course, works with Word documents and text files or any other files.
And there's a question, do you handle one file at a time, or multiple file selections will also work?
So you can, if you know what you want to do with the files, you can batch the jobs. So we can work with many files at once.
Yeah, and also you can also have many of these file service variables and that works across. So you can have different contexts on each of them. Then there's a great question from Ulrich: access to the local machine via the user rights entered in the.
The user rights entered in the JSON configuration. So the access to on the local machine, that depends on the user rights on the service user. So the service runs as a normal Windows service, and any Windows service has a user context where you put a username and credentials on each service, and this is what determines what the file service can see and do.
Yes. So great questions. But as Jacob said, this is version 1, and we already have this out in a lot of installations, and we get input. But the more input we get on also what scenarios that you're using this for, and what your wishes are the future, the better, because then we can improve this. Because we are here for the long run, and we want to enhance this to to be a great file service. It already is, but we want to make the best. So if you run into problems or you have questions on how this would work in a given scenario, we want to hear it from you. So please write us so we can make the product better.
Michael, maybe you want to talk about the pricing and trial period?
Oh yeah. So pricing is easy. So it comes with a ForNAV license, just like the print service. So we have a fair usage. So if you go completely berserk, we might give you a call. But given that we have customers doing several 100,000 prints a month, and we allow them to do that, we haven't really enforced that. So normally everything stays within the normal ForNAV license. So it basically just enhance what you already get from the existing ForNAV license. That of course also is the case for existing users. So anybody who has a valid ForNAV license can also use this, given that the version is new enough. So you have to be on Universal Code or cloud to use this. And of course, we want to enforce the license, because we know that some people forget to buy a license because it's UI-less. So please remind me, Jakob, what's when do the license kick in?
From the day you install the local service, there's a 30-day trial period, and then you need a license.
Yeah. I mean, in somehow you get in trouble and you're not allowed, you're not able to get the license. You just ping us, and we'll most likely extend the period for you. So we are not really hardliners on that. So we will find a solution if you run into to this 1 month's limitation. So Jan, anything else? Probably forgot a lot, but anything important? I think Jan is muted, but thank you all for listening, and we don't get in contact. Have a great Christmas, and hopefully we'll see a lot of uptake on this feature. So have a great day. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.